Singularity, Skynet, Android, Cyborg, Executive Order, Space Weather, Nanobot Surveillance Grid, latest leak project. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and I wanted to bring to your attention a recent report that just came out preparing for the future of artificial intelligence. Now, this is from the Executive Office of the President, National Science and Technology Council Committee on Technology. Just came out October 2016, and the interesting thing about this is it actually gets into the implications of artificial intelligence with not only the economy but possible defense industries and what it's actually going to do overall for human beings, essentially the entire planet. I mean, there's just so much involved with artificial intelligence. Now, if you've heard me talk before about how I personally feel with the singularity and the transhuman movement and autonomous robots, etc., I'm very cautious about the possibilities. I look at the singularity as a very real possibility, and I certainly don't want to become obsolete. I don't know about you guys, but so many people that I've discussed in reference to the singularity and the big push on the transhuman movement is, oh, it's okay, it's no big deal. There's nothing going to be created that's smarter than we are because it can't happen. And I think that's kind of ignorant. I'm not trying to be rude. I just don't think that's a really wise thought process, and here's why. Especially if you look at some of the ancient scriptures that talk about the archons essentially creating Adam, and then once they create Adam, they realize he's greater than they are, and so they try and imprison him and just mess with him after they make him. And you can say that's true. You can say it's not subliminal. You can say it's symbolic, whatever you want. I get it. But it certainly resonates with me. And also, you look at a lot of the underlying scripts in movies, TV shows. Think about the Cylons in Battlestar Galactica, where we create the Cylons, and then they're like, hey, we don't want to be your slaves anymore. So there's this war, and then at the very end, if you've watched the series, if you haven't watched the series and you want to watch it, don't listen to the next 10 seconds here, but if you've seen the series, at the end, they basically have to work together. And then you can watch the X-Men movie that came out, not the most recent one, but the one prior to that, where these AI cyborgs are more powerful than all the mutants combined. The Terminator series. I mean, it's talked about through multiple TV shows and facets of life. Even before TV shows came out, this stuff was talked about. And it makes me wonder, if everything's cyclical, maybe we've been here before. Maybe this is a deja vu moment. You can look at some of the work of Michael Cremo, Forbidden Archaeology. They find tools that are millions and millions of years old. So history rewrites itself all the time, so does science, and it's just incredible, folks. So I look at everything with an open mind, but not so open that my mind falls out. And I think that that's a pretty good approach. So let's get into this preparing for the future of artificial intelligence. Now, we see it in cars. If you watch any of the commercials, a lot of the commercials for cars now are showing people being total airheads while they're driving, losing track of time, ADD to the max, and this software embedded in the car combined with the sensors stops the car, prevents the crash. And this is a slippery slope. If we continue to allow machines, sensors, artificial intelligence, etc., to do the work for us, then we're eventually going to be giving away many natural abilities that we were born with. Think of the movie Surrogate with Bruce Willis, where they eventually just start to plug into a virtual reality network that's combined with androids that do all the work for them. And they live out their wildest heathenistic fantasies in their chairs while they get fatter and become more dilapidated by the hour, sucking down pharmaceuticals to stay alive in their machines without having to exercise or even get up and go to the bathroom. They're probably hooked up to a decapitator, or not a decapitator, a decatheter, and sitting on some type of seat that they can just take a dump right there. I know it sounds gross, doesn't it? But welcome to Idiocracy, the artificial intelligence movement. And don't get me wrong, I think there's a lot of great stuff out there. If you really think about how cool technology is, I mean, it's freaking awesome. We can do some amazing things. We can communicate better than the kings could just 100 years ago on the internet. We can talk to people from around the world on various platforms and get a lot of good information. We can also feed ourselves with a lot of BS and poison on the internet. So you have to be really careful what we choose to accept. If it resonates with you, hey, that's great, fantastic. Go with your gut instincts if you have some left. Where is the future of artificial intelligence going to lead us? Where am I going with this? Well, let's move on here for a moment. Supercomputers. Have you guys been keeping track of the recent supercomputer platforms that are coming out? Right now in China, they're kicking our butts currently, at least in the public sector, with the supercomputer that they've got. It's hitting 93 petaflops per hour. That is absolutely blazing fast. 93 quadrillion floating points per second. So you might think, wow, that's way beyond the average human, right? No, the average human can process approximately 38,000 quadrillion floating points per second. So it's still a long ways off the singularity, at least according to these silicon chip-based computers that we have an opportunity to learn about. Now, you guys have probably heard of quantum computers, which are supposed to be even way above and beyond most silicon chip type computers. But with this type of platform and so many chips and so much hardware working together, this is absolutely cutting edge. 93 quadrillion floating points per second. 93. Check out the gematria in that number. Using over 250,000 processors, 72 racks and cabinets. Take a look at this bad boy right here. I wonder how much energy it takes just to keep this system cool. It's got to have a pretty cool setup, no pun intended, to keep these chips at optimal processing speeds and temperatures. It's being kind of slow here loading this. Give it a second. No. There we go. Beautiful work here. I mean, this is just incredible. Now, they've got different types of computers that they're working on now. It's more in a trial and error, experimental platforms, prototypes, the quantum computers. They've got DNA computers, etc. Take a look at this. I did some math. And right now, currently, with 93 quadrillion floating points per second being the fastest supercomputer on the market, if you use traditional graphs and go back almost 10 years, if we go back to 2008, the IBM Roadrunner, which was the fastest supercomputer of its time, was running 1.1 quadrillion floating points per second. In 2018, possibly even by next year, IBM is coming out with a machine that's running 300 quadrillion floating points per second. Now, that's over a 300% increase in less than 10 years. Now, I'm going to be real conservative here. If you use these traditional charts and look at how fast it's going to take to build the supercomputer, at least with silicon chips, to compete with the level of an average human brain, it's going to take over 30 years. Matter of fact, it's going to take over 40 years. In 50 years, this is where it gets scary. If you use traditional silicon-based chip computers, they will have a computer running 72,900 quadrillion floating points per second. This is traditional graphs and charts. That means computers 3 times faster than the average brain. And this is exponential, folks. Every 10 years, it increases 300%. There's no end in sight. This is traditional charts. Now, if you get into some of the more experimental stuff, which I'm sure is really going to take the forefront here in the next few years, with the quantum computers, the DNA computers. Now, remember, when these computers get faster, they also get smaller. They find ways to build chips and technology, hardware at nanoscale, literally. They have nano robots now. And if you think I'm exaggerating, I'm going to show you the patents and the technology here in just a minute. So within 50 years, 3 times faster than the average human. Now, if you look at the human archetype as a whole, would you say we're getting smarter? Or would you say that our IQs are diminishing and we're losing intelligence, common sense, thought processes that we had years ago? Let's say it stays the same. The average IQ of 100. Now, I'll bet you most of the people that listen to Leap Project, you guys are probably quite a bit above that. And I'm not just saying that because you listen to Leap Project. Seriously, most people I've talked to at the Leap Project, you're probably up there in the 120s, 130s, 140s, maybe even all the way up into the 180s. We've had guests on the show before that are over 170. And hey, that's fantastic. It takes eclectic minds to listen to this kind of stuff and really appreciate it. Otherwise, you'd just be sucking down diet soda, watching a football game, heating up some popcorn in bisphenol A containers, and then adding a bunch of silicone and salt on top of that. I'm digressing. Where are we going with this technology, guys? Are we going to give up our natural abilities to think for ourselves? I mean, the new virtual reality sets are pretty cool, aren't they? You can just plug into these new Samsung headsets, and they're pretty cool. I've seen them, actually. If you go to Six Flags, there's the Superman ride out there. You can do the headset, and you can actually have a chance to take the roller coaster ride at the same time. It's an extraordinary experience. When I did it, about 3/4 of the way through, though, the headset got too hot, so it shut down. So the last part of the ride was kind of stupid because you couldn't really see anything because you had this headset on, but you're moving up in the air extremely fast. So, I mean, there's a lot of really cool things you can do with technology. Don't get me wrong. We just have to keep this balance and realize the more we allow the machine to work for us and do our tasks, there's going to be a much larger gap in the financial markets. You're going to have more of an upper class and lower class, not much more of a middle class. And even the lower class, I mean, think about it. They've got fast food restaurants now that are running on robots, literally. Blockbuster, remember that place? There was hundreds and hundreds, thousands of stores around the world, Blockbuster. Now I don't know if there's any, and if there is, there's very few left, because you can get everything on the internet now. You can download it from your Roku or your Android, Google Chrome stick, whatever. I mean, it's a lot easier now to do this. You don't have to go to a store and then fight in line for 15 minutes to get a movie, drive there, find out that the movies are all rented out anyway. Remember that? Remember those days? And then sometimes you were lucky because they had the movie you wanted behind the counter. If you were cool enough or you knew the person working there, sometimes they'd hold it for you. I got a story for you. Speaking of, I'm going to digress here for a second. I actually met Karl Malone once when I worked at a movie rental store in Utah right out of high school. And there was a movie that we had behind the counter that he wanted, and there was none behind the actual movie itself. And he brought the movie cover up to us. And he goes, "Do you have this?" And my boss goes, "Yeah." And my boss hooked him up. He tipped us $20. We got pizza. It was graveyard shift. I was 18. It was an awesome experience. So, it's kind of neat how things like that happen at certain times and they resonate with you. You guys ever had a neat experience at your job that just kind of made you look differently at a certain industry or somebody that's in the limelight that a lot of people ridicule? You realize they're just real people like you and myself. Now, this right here, what I'm showing you guys, is the EATR, the EATR, the energetically autonomous tactical robot. Why am I bringing this up? Well, because this is going to have a real big influence on the possibilities of the future with robotics. This is a specific platform that you can plug and play into different types of robots, all different shapes and sizes. So it's not just one specific robot. What I find fascinating about this technology, though, is the power plant is a steam engine built by Cyclone Power Technologies. And what it does is it consumes biomass and it converts that biomass into fuel. So it could, in theory, run in perpetuity by pillaging the earth, literally by feeding off of biomass. And I actually went into the slideshow of this specific program that they brought out into DARPA and presented, and you can just Google it. You can find it on Google. It actually showed a lot of different types of biomass that this would consume or be able to use and convert into fuel, and it showed the percentages, etc. And when this first came out several years ago, there was a big spin on the internet about how it could essentially, there's this machine that's coming out that's going to eat dead people when the zombie apocalypse happens, and it's going to be able to run forever like the Duracell bunny because there's going to be dead people all over the place, and it's going to be able to just consume these bodies and continue to feed, and it's going to be like Terminator. And that's a possibility, although I couldn't find anything that showed it actually consumed some type of animals. It was plants, biomass. Pretty cool stuff. Now, if you want to go a little bit deeper, if you've got these things running around on AI systems combined with the satellites out there and all the different sensors that are strategically placed around the globe, and there's trillions of them, folks, and if you think I'm exaggerating, I'll show you here in a second. You guys seen the Atlas robot? Have you seen RoboCop, the original RoboCop, or the new one that just came out? Great movies, by the way. Androids, law enforcement, good idea, bad idea? I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you want a Atlas type robot, what we're looking at right here, giving you speeding tickets? We're knocking on your door because there is a maybe noise complaint, Maybe you're jamming some music with your Klipsch surround system, got a little bit loud, upset the neighbors, so you got one of these things knocking on the door telling you to turn it down. What if somebody hacked one of these things? I mean, just about everything can be hacked, right? Even electronic implants. Think about that for a minute. So, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a good idea. These things look pretty intense, and the abilities that they have are becoming more and more human-like on a daily basis. So, still with that said, I mean, these are robots. You're going to be able to see them coming a mile away, so you're not going to have to worry about, hey, if there's a robot coming, maybe you can at least be prepared or hide out, somewhere, because these robots aren't very bright, right? Well, if they're hooked up to a supercomputer that's running 90,000 quadrillion floating points per second, and it has everybody's psychological profiles in its hard drive, essentially, so it knows exactly, or very close to exact, how people think, where they're going, what they're doing, what they're thinking, what their hot buttons are, what makes them mad, what makes them happy, what they've thought in the past, who their friends are, who their friends' friends are, who their friends' enemies are, etc. What they buy, where they go. No, but they're not going to be very smart. They're just robots, right? You ever played chess on the computer or against the computer? How good are you when it's in the hardest mode? I used to think I was pretty good at chess. I played with people around the world, and I've realized I'm not that good. A little bit above average. I could beat, I'm sure, most of my friends. Anybody that I've ever played at chess that I know as a friend, not from the internet, I've beat them. But there's some great players out there. But even an excellent player, if you're taking on a computer that's running 93,000 quadrillion floating points per second, and it's got the best software, and it knows all the games that have ever been played because they're all downloaded into its hard drives, you're going to have a tough time beating that thing. A very tough time. So, what if computers start creating themselves? What if these machines start creating themselves, like in the singularity concept that's been talked about, the Terminator series? DNA computers, you guys familiar with these? It's a branch of computing which uses DNA, biochemistry, and molecular biology hardware instead of the traditional silicon-based computer technologies. These are real. They've been around for years, and who knows how far they are behind some of these doors, black ops type experimental programs tucked far, far away that we don't hear about until 20, 30, 40 years later when it starts hitting the commercial markets. Imagine computers creating androids with DNA processors that look like this one right here. Easy, fellas. What do you think about this? This is a Japanese android that's been around for years. It's looking pretty real. Yeah, you can tell it's an android, unless you've had a few too many drinks. And there's probably people out there that do have too many drinks often and wouldn't mind something like this. Hey, she's programmed not to talk back. She's programmed to not get mad at you if you leave the toilet seat up. She's programmed to actually put away the dishes after she cooks dinner for you. She'll service you in more ways than one, fellas. What do you think? Are you ready to upgrade? I'm being sarcastic. I'm joking. This is terrible. I'm digressing here. Now, let's go to these bad boys. The Legged Squad support system. I've seen video footage of these things. Here's a 2012 prototype. Imagine having one of these bad boys chase after you. But they're not very smart, right? Well, they're hooked up to about a half dozen sensors, infrared type stuff, cameras, computers, satellite system, AI stuff, etc. They're getting quicker, more efficient. And let's say you finally get away from the mule here. You get away from the eater, the mule. Now you got to worry about mosquito drones. Yes, that's right, mosquito drones. You guys remember these, right? The mosquito drones. How would you like to swat your arm and realize you just whacked a drone? What would you do with it? I think that'd be pretty awesome. I'll definitely make a podcast about that. But there's literally mosquito-sized flying spy drones, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a conspiracy. It's even been talked about on ABC. They've got mosquito bees, mosquito moths. Oh, we can kill off all the bees with pesticides because now we're just going to make robot bees. And they're even better. They're even faster, more efficient. Plus, we can get a contract with China, and China's going to make 1 billion of them for us. And they're going to go take that guy's land over there in Oregon because he's next to some BLM land. So China's got a good contract with them. See how everybody's happy now? And we don't have to worry about pesticides killing them off. They actually feed off the pesticides. Roundup actually is now going to fuel these nano bots, these insect drones. So it's all connected. It's wonderful, isn't it? Roundup ready, ladies and gentlemen. Now, have you guys had any opportunities to see the moths and the different insects and animals that are actually controlled via remote? Somebody's sitting at their desk or standing up with a remote control, moving these insects and moths and birds and butterflies around like something out of the Twilight Zone. You think that's a conspiracy? Well, it's not. You can read the patents actually right here. And here's the recent developments in the remote radio control of insect flights. If you go to Frontiers in Neuroscience, let me read this to you real quick. The continuing miniaturization of digital circuits and the development of low-power radio systems, coupled with continuing studies into the neurophysiology and dynamics of insect flight, are enabling a new class of implantable interfaces capable of controlling insects in free flight for extended periods. We provide context for these developments, review the state of the art, and discuss future directions in this field. Isn't that something? Right here, technology, wireless telemetry and control. The development of wireless systems for small free-flying and walking insects began in the early 90s, with applications ranging from neuromuscular recording. How about that? Wireless systems used for neuromuscular recording and stimulation of free-flying insects. But it's just an insect, right? That won't work on humans, so we don't have anything to worry about, right? That couldn't happen to us. We couldn't be influenced with Wi-Fi. I mean, it's not everywhere, is it? Well, there's some type of antenna that's emitting an electronic impulse somewhere that's affecting you and everybody you know, unless you're in Tibet. And even in Tibet, there's cell phone towers, antenna, satellites. It's virtually impossible to completely escape from these electronic frequencies. So could they be controlling you right now and you don't even know it? What if they're controlling everybody right now to an extent and just keeping people docile, keeping you under their thumb, under their control, allowing them to profit off of poisoning you, your family, the world, virtually everybody in sight? Think about it for a minute. How many people you know that have personally been damaged from toxins in vaccines or some type of chemical that big pharma or big corporations had on the market as safe, guaranteed? What happens when they get caught after they've made millions, sometimes billions of dollars? Well, in the pharmaceutical industry most of the time, if a drug is deemed toxic after it's been given to X amount of people, they'll take it off the market. They'll get sued for millions of dollars. Usually, it's not as much as they make. They go on to a new drug, do it again, make a whole bunch of other drugs to band-aid the issues that person might have because of the one drug he took where they said it was going to help him. It's this dark ecstasy control grid. And people still continue to allow it. And most of the time, when you talk to people about it, your friends, your family, your coworkers, people that you might meet somewhere in a restaurant, because you hear them talking about how amazing the flu shot is and everybody should get it. And if somebody's anti-vaccine, then they're a nut. They're a conspiracy theorist. You're a conspiracy theorist. People get more pissed off about if a picture of Planet X is lens flare or not than they do about friends and family that get poisoned by big pharma. I lost a very dear friend because his organs were cooked because he was on either 11 or 12 different pharmaceutical drugs. The doctors just kept giving him more like candy. Oh, these are vitamins. Yeah, take it. Oh, it's got an FDA black label. It might just cook your organs, but that's okay. It'll lower your cholesterol. Okay, thanks, Doc. He's dead now. Most selfless man I've ever met. Gave me the shirt off his back literally at one point in life. But it's okay. Because Big Pharma says it is. Your government says it's okay. We need to worry about transgender bathrooms. That's more important, ladies and gentlemen. It's okay. We're just going to kill all the natural stuff and make robots. That's what everybody's doing. We're just going to plug you in, ladies and gentlemen. It's good for you. You want nanotechnology running around in your brain because you might get a little depressed. It'll just rewrite your cerebral cortex and you'll be fine. You'll feel good about getting poisoned. Yeah. I love it. Now, that's another thing I want to talk about. Look at this. Nanoparticulates in just about everything. Consumer products, lotions, soaps, foods, vitamins, supplements, shampoos, toothpaste, medicine, you name it, pesticides. But they're real small, it's not going to hurt anybody. Yeah, they're so small that they actually go through the brain-blood barrier, right into the bloodstream. No big deal, right? You can read dozens of articles, ladies and gentlemen, about how these nanoparticulates are in virtually all people that they've tested. Even babies and newborns, they're finding these nanoparticulates. We don't know what the outcome's going to be. It'll be all right, though, because they say it will. It's been tested. It's guaranteed to be okay, ladies and gentlemen. It's guaranteed. No big deal, though, right? Nah. I'm more upset about who lost the ball game yesterday, man. I mean, did you see that? That was definitely not a foul. I mean, that referee should lose his job. You know, I didn't even watch the Super Bowl last year, guys, or the year before that, or the year before that. I can't even remember the last Super Bowl I watched, and I used to love sports. But once you realize most of it's a lie anyways, it's a part of the billionaire big boys club. People that win are those that they want to win most of the time, not always. There's a lot of influence in there. Now, I told you guys earlier that there's literally nano robots, and I said I'm going to prove it to you. Here's the article right here, nanowork.com. Let me read this to you. Bashir's team coupled polystyrene nanoparticulates loaded with plasmid DNA to the surface of weakened bacteria. Here it goes. 3 steps were necessary to make our microbots, says Bashir. First, we treated the bacteria with biotin-carrying antibody that acts against and will therefore attach to proteins on the bacterial surface called myrmidase. Probably said that name wrong. 3 steps, you guys. A 3-step process to make microbots. And this article is from 2007. This is almost 10 years old. Nanotechnology. It's good for you. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing it. That kind of reminds me, I've talked about this before, where a very dear friend of mine just had a baby, and it was a C-section. The doctor said that she needed to have a C-section, so she did. And they pull the baby out, super healthy baby, weighs less than 6 pounds, and they say, oh, this is a vitamin K shot. They say this to her. This is a vitamin K shot. Or not to her, but to the husband. Everybody's doing it. You give this to the baby so the baby's brain won't clot. And he goes, well, what's in it? Just vitamin K. Let me see the insert. So he grabs it, looks at it. He sees that there's literally aluminum in the vitamin K shot. And he says, I'm not giving this to my baby. This has got aluminum in it. The lady looks confused. Then not the doctor, but the guy that gives the drugs comes over, which, by the way, he's been doing this for 17 years, he said. He comes over and he says to my friend, you know, if this is my grandbaby, I'll kick you out of here right now because this is really important. So he threatened my friend, essentially, tried to strong-arm him into giving his baby this shot, making him feel like he's doing the wrong thing because he doesn't want to inject his baby with an aluminum-filled vitamin K shot. So the baby doesn't get the shot. Baby's super healthy now, extremely healthy now, by the way. And I did some research into this vitamin K shot that every baby's getting. And not only is there aluminum in this shot, but there's a whole bunch of other nasty stuff in this shot, adjuvants. It'll say no additives, but there's really additives in there. And if you read the insert, literally read the first page of the insert, and it talks about injecting of the shot, and it talks about how there's a possibility of death if you get this shot. But everybody's doing it, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, it's just this kind of stuff you got to keep track on. And then to make matters worse, after everything's great, a few weeks later, baby gets a checkup. The doctor gives my friend a hard time about the hepatitis shot. Says, oh, you should really get the hepatitis shot for your baby, because it'll prevent hepatitis. And first of all, if you guys know about hepatitis, you're usually only going to get it if you're doing some type of intravenous drugs and you're mixing blood or you're having some hardcore unprotected sex. Really not something you need to worry about. You get my point. It's just retarded. So after this whole deal, the doctor, she said, no, I don't want to give the baby the hepatitis vaccine. She explained why. She said, well, there's also aluminum in the vaccine, etc. And the doctor actually had the right, I think the doctor's got her heart in the right place. She went and looked into it. She saw that the vaccine did have some aluminum in it, but then she came back and to my friend and said, well, there's just a little bit of aluminum in it. So, there's just a little bit. And then my friend basically said, look, no way. There's not only aluminum in there, but enough other nasties, showed the insert, etc. And now I think the doctor's really thinking twice about giving babies hepatitis vaccines because vaccines supposedly cure polio. You know what I mean? It's just, that's the mindset people go to sometimes, is these religious mindsets. But that's just the kind of mentality people have today. Even the doctors, the drug pushers, they don't know what kind of drugs they're giving people. And then you show them what's in the vaccines and what's in these products, and they act like, oh, well, aluminum? What does that matter? That's not a big deal. It's just a little bit of aluminum, son. You'll be all right. Question everything, ladies and gentlemen. Question everything. Now, take a look at this. This is a cell phone tower disguised as a church. How would you like to go to that church? You can tell they certainly care about their congregation, don't they? There's so many different types of antennas now. Cell phone towers, Wi-Fi setup, ELF-ray, electronic low frequency, and who knows what else they're using. Look at this one's disguised as a tree. You might have these things next to your place of work, next to your house, your apartment complex, your vacation home, and wouldn't even know it sometimes because they're so good at disguising it. Now, these can affect people. They do affect people. These vibrational frequencies affect some more than others, but they can also trigger certain reactions, certain attitudes, emotions, etc. Another way they're tracking people now, I talked about this a little while ago. This is called the central nervous system of the Earth. It is over 1 trillion sensors that are going to be placed everywhere. They probably already have been. This is several years old now. That keeps tracks of movements all the way from an earthquake, something underground, to somebody walking, to somebody breathing, to somebody talking, somebody blowing their nose, somebody wiping their butt, somebody combing their hair, somebody brushing their teeth, somebody eating a Big Mac, somebody yelling at their neighbor for letting their dog crap in their yard. You name it. It'll pick up on just about everything and then transfer it back into these supercomputers. And then incredible what these guys are doing and how incredible the technologies are getting. Be aware of the situation. Now, Skynet, you guys heard of Skynet from Terminator, etc. I start to wonder how much accuracy is in these films because Skynet is a satellite system that's been around since the late 50s, and they're using Skynet communication satellites around the world now to not only transfer different types of data that we don't have access to, but there's a lot of hush-hush, top-secret stuff involved with Skynet. Space debris. Have you guys seen these images of how many satellites are out there? Now, these are all connected to something here at home, right? What happens if there's a giant solar flare and it wipes out all these satellites? What happens if we get attacked from either a lone gunman or a foreign government or something within our own government that does something malicious where they cause an EMP or the sun itself is so extreme with a solar flare that it wipes all these satellites out? I'm starting to think of maybe that's why there's this executive order that recently passed a few days ago from the White House, coordinating efforts to prepare the nation for space weather events. So we've got 6 months, essentially, or these corporations and different departments, Department of Defense, Homeland Security, nuclear facilities, transportation facilities, a whole bunch, a wide spectrum of different sources and resources are going to be improved to help protect these satellites from events in space. Now, some people speculate this is because of Planet X or Nibiru. Some people think it's because of a possible solar flare from the sun. Maybe it's due to what I just talked about. Maybe a foreign government or somebody's going to try and use some type of EMP before they bring in troops. I mean, if you really think about it with technology, the only way to where you're going to have a chance to take on somebody or something that has better technology than you, like we're talking light years ahead, is if you find a way to get rid of that technology. Now, what do you think would happen if all the satellites, the internet essentially went down, the ATMs, the credit card processors? What happens when all that goes down? What happens if the lights in the street go out? What happens if you lose power in your house? What happens if the nuclear reactors lose power to their cooling systems? Things start to go wrong. It turns into a domino effect. So this executive order from the White House is actually a really good idea, in my opinion, because there needs to be a lot of protective measures in place, especially for these nuclear facilities, and with Stuxnet and different types of Stuxnet that has developed and adapted from the original. Keeping satellites and stuff in space well protected, multiple layers of protection, is definitely a good idea in my book. So this is just something I wanted to bring to your attention, folks. I thought it was really interesting when I went to the article here, preparing for the future of artificial intelligence. When I saw this, I said to myself, you know what? I think this is a good time to talk about this kind of stuff and just bring people more aware of the possibilities. A lot of stuff that you might think is conspiracy, woo-woo, far out, is just the tip of the iceberg. Truth is truly stranger than fiction. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Make sure to check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/clandestine-timelord. Subscribe, become a member, absolutely free. And if you can spend a few bucks, become a contributing member at our website, leakproject.com. We have an exclusive members section, only available for contributing members. You'll have access to all of our podcasts, commercial-free, downloadable, streamable. We have some really cool new decals in our shop. Check them out. They were made by McArt Work. Thank you. And also check out myozarkhomestead.com if you're looking for an insurance-type policy for an off-the-grid network to be involved in if any of this stuff actually happens. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Talk to you soon. Preparing future artificial intelligence, singularity, Skynet, Android, cyborg, executive order, space weather, nanobot surveillance grid, latest leak project. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and I wanted to bring to your attention a recent report that just came out preparing for the future of artificial intelligence. Now, this is from the Executive Office of the President, National Science and Technology Council Committee on Technology. Just came out October 2016, and the interesting thing about this is it actually gets into the implications of artificial intelligence with not only the economy but possible defense industries and what it's actually going to do overall for human beings, essentially the entire planet. I mean, there's just so much involved with artificial intelligence. Now, if you've heard me talk before about how I personally feel with the singularity and the transhuman movement and autonomous robots, etc., I'm very cautious about the possibilities. I look at the singularity as a very real possibility, and I certainly don't want to become obsolete. I don't know about you guys, but so many people that I've discussed in reference to the singularity and the big push on the transhuman movement is, oh, it's okay, it's no big deal. There's nothing going to be created that's smarter than we are because it can't happen. And I think that's kind of ignorant, and I'm not trying to be rude. I just don't think that's a really wise thought process, and here's why. Especially if you look at some of the ancient scriptures that talk about the archons essentially creating Adam, and then once they create Adam, they realize he's greater than they are, and so they try and imprison him and just mess with him after they make him. And you can say that's true, you can say it's not subliminal, you can say it's symbolic, whatever you want, I get it. But it certainly resonates with me. And also, you look at a lot of the underlying scripts in movies, TV shows, Think about the Cylons in Battlestar Galactica, where we create the Cylons, and then they're like, hey, we don't want to be your slaves anymore. So there's this war, and then at the very end, if you've watched the series, if you haven't watched the series and you want to watch it, don't listen to the next 10 seconds here, but if you've seen this series, at the end, they basically have to work together. And then you can watch the X-Men movie that came out, not the most recent one, but the one prior to that, where these AI cyborgs are more powerful than all the mutants combined. The Terminator series, it's talked about through multiple TV shows and facets of life. Even before TV shows came out, this stuff was talked about. And it makes me wonder, if everything's cyclical, maybe we've been here before. Maybe this is a deja vu moment. You can look at some of the work of Michael Cremo, Forbidden Archaeology. They find tools that are millions and millions of years old. So history rewrites itself all the time, so does science, and it's just incredible, folks. So I look at everything with an open mind, but not so open that my mind falls out. And I think that that's a pretty good approach. So let's get into this preparing for the future of artificial intelligence. Now, we see it in cars. If you watch any of the commercials, a lot of the commercials for cars now are showing people being total airheads while they're driving, losing track of time, ADD to the max, and this software embedded in the car combined with the sensors stops the car, prevents the crash. And this is a slippery slope. If we continue to allow machines, sensors, artificial intelligence, etc., to do the work for us, then we're eventually going to be giving away many natural abilities that we were born with. Think of the movie Surrogate with Bruce Willis, where they eventually just start to plug into a virtual reality network that's combined with androids that do all the work for them. And they live out their wildest heathenistic fantasies in their chairs while they get fatter and become more dilapidated by the hour, sucking down pharmaceuticals to stay alive in their machines without having to exercise or even get up and go to the bathroom. They're probably hooked up to a decapitator, or not a decapitator, a decatheter, and sitting on some type of seat that they can just take a dump right there. I know it sounds gross, doesn't it? But welcome to Idiocracy, the artificial intelligence movement. And don't get me wrong, I think there's a lot of great stuff out there. If you really think about how cool technology is, it's freaking awesome. We can do some amazing things. We can communicate better than the kings could just 100 years ago on the internet. We can talk to people from around the world on various platforms and get a lot of good information. We can also feed ourselves with a lot of BS and poison on the internet. So you have to be really careful what we choose to accept. If it resonates with you, hey, that's great, fantastic. Go with your gut instincts if you have some left. Where is the future of artificial intelligence going to lead us? Where am I going with this? Well, let's move on here for a moment. Supercomputers. Have you guys been keeping track of the recent supercomputer platforms that are coming out? Right now in China, they're kicking our butts currently, at least in the public sector, with the supercomputer that they've got. It's hitting 93 petaflops per hour. That is absolutely blazing fast. 93 quadrillion floating points per second. So you might think, wow, that's way beyond the average human, right? No, the